History teaches us how people fail. It rarely teaches us what happens when someone succeeds too much. This is not a story about invention, or war, or even the bomb. This is a story about about what happens when your greatest achievement becomes the heaviest thing you'll ever carry. This is the unfiled record of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Before he became a symbol, he was a prodigy. A theoretical physicist so brilliant, his colleagues struggled to keep up. He spoke multiple languages, quoted poetry from memory, moved effortlessly between equations and philosophy. To those around him, Oppenheimer didn't just understand physics, he felt it. And when the world needed someone to solve an impossible problem, he was chosen. The task was simple to describe and impossible to comprehend. Build a weapon the world had never seen. Do it faster than anyone else. Do it before the enemy does. The Manhattan Project was not a lab. It was a pressure cooker. Thousands of scientists, secrecy, deadlines tied to war, and at the center of it all, Oppenheimer, not barking orders, not ruling with fear, but guiding, connecting minds, holding chaos together. By every measurable standard, he succeeded. On July 16, 1945, the impossible became real. A flash brighter than the sun, a shockwave that rewrote physics textbooks. The first nuclear explosion worked. The project was a success. The war would soon end. History would remember the moment as triumph. But Oppenheimer's story doesn't peak here. This is where it fractures. Standing in the desert, watching the fireball rise, he didn't cheer, he didn't celebrate. Instead, a sentence surfaced in his mind, words he had read years earlier in an ancient text. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Not a metaphor, a realization. Because for the first time, human intelligence had outpaced human wisdom, and Oppenheimer knew it. At first, the world treated him like a hero. Magazine covers, public praise, political attention. He was invited to shape the future of nuclear policy, to advise presidents, to guide the age he helped create. But internally, something had shifted. The achievement didn't feel complete. It felt open-ended, unfinished, uncontainable. Oppenheimer began speaking carefully. He warned against stockpiling weapons, against escalation, against pretending this power could be controlled forever. He didn't say the bomb was a mistake. He said it was a responsibility that had no precedent. That made him dangerous, not as a scientist, as a thinker. In a world entering the Cold War, certainty was currency, doubt was liability, and Oppenheimer was full of doubt. So the same system that elevated him turned on him, quietly, procedurally, officially. His loyalty was questioned, his associations scrutinized, his words reinterpreted, not because he had betrayed the country, but because he had evolved past the role they needed him to play. The man who built the future was now inconvenient to it. The hearing that followed was not a trial, it was a dismantling. Every friendship examined, every hesitation weaponized, not to prove guilt, but to erase authority. And it worked. Oppenheimer lost his security clearance. Just like that, the voice that warned the world was muted. From the outside, it looked like a fall from grace. From the inside, it was something else entirely. Because by then, the damage wasn't reputational, it was psychological. There is a specific kind of burden that comes from irreversible success. Failure can be corrected. Success at this scale cannot. You don't undo it. You don't outgrow it. You don't escape it. You live with it. Every conversation, every silence, every global headline, all trace back to something you helped unleash. Oppenheimer continued teaching, writing, thinking, but the center of gravity had moved. He was no longer shaping the future. He was watching it unfold, with full awareness of what it could become. And here's the part history rarely lingers on. Oppenheimer wasn't destroyed by guilt. He was eroded by clarity, by understanding consequences before anyone else, by seeing the chain reaction long before the explosion. This is the quiet danger of extreme achievement. When you succeed beyond society's ability to emotionally process the result, you become isolated. Not because people reject you, but because they cannot meet you where your understanding now lives. Oppenheimer once said that scientists had known sin, not in a religious sense, in a human one. The sin of creating something that outpaces moral infrastructure. The sin of being right too early. And that's why his story matters now. Not because of nuclear weapons, but because modern success moves faster than ever. Technology, artificial intelligence, biology, finance. We celebrate breakthroughs. We reward outcomes. But we rarely ask, what happens to the people who see the consequences first? Some achievements don't end with applause. They end with silence, with exclusion, with watching the world move forward without listening to the one person who understands where it leads. Oppenheimer lived long enough to see his warnings ignored, to see escalation normalized, to see deterrence become doctrine. And yet, he never stopped thinking, never stopped questioning, never stopped carrying what he helped create. So if history feels clean when you read it, it's because the discomfort was edited out, because the real cost of success is rarely visible in timelines. It lives inside the people who achieved too much for their own peace. This wasn't a story about a bomb. It was a story about aftermath, about the psychological weight of changing the world and having nowhere to put it. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moment isn't failure. It's success that comes before we're ready to live with it. If this story stayed with you, that's intentional. Most people hear history as something that already happened. But some stories don't end. They echo. Oppenheimer's didn't end with the bomb. It continued in the silence that followed. And there are many more stories like this. Records that were never officially closed. Moments history prefers not to sit with. If you want to explore those, you know where to find them. Subscribe to the Unfiled record, and if this made you pause, even briefly, leave a comment. Not to explain, not to debate, just to mark the moment you noticed something you won't unsee. We'll continue here.